I recently watched this very interesting interview with a very prominent German sociologist professor called Martin Schröder. And Martin Schröder has just published a book about the general happiness level of women in Germany, because he's a happiness researcher. And his studies include thousands of surveys with thousands of women, and he's a professor of a very renowned German university, so I guess he can be regarded as a pretty legit scholar. Still, the big German newspapers, of which a majority is pretty left-leaning, are trying to discredit even him, because his findings are not really correlating with the worldview of modern feminism the media tries to push, obviously. So what are his findings that are probably not only true for Germany, but for a large part of Western Europe, and probably even for a large part of the Western world in general? Let's find out. Welcome to German Reacts. First, Professor Schröder found that most women and men are by and large pretty satisfied with their lives, with a score of 7.4 out of 10. And he was able to show that women in general feel pretty fairly treated in their jobs and also in their relationships. And also, and now it gets super spicy, he was able to show that women in general do prefer to work part-time and stay at home more than men do, because it's like 75% of women working part-time in Germany. So in his studies, he could pretty much demonstrate that Western women in general, instead of being unfairly treated systematically or oppressed by a patriarchal society or something, it actually seems that most of them choose to work less in an office job and choose to stay at home with kids more. A finding that actually got Professor Schröder in trouble, because in our modern day and age you can't state something like that without being called a misogynist or right-leaning. But in the interview, Professor Schröder even goes a step further, which really surprised me, because the interview was aired on a public broadcasting service, which are not exactly known for airing such contentious topics. Professor Schröder drops the term illiberal feminism, and he defines it as a small handful of feminists who refuse to accept that the vast majority of Western women actually seem to be pretty okay with their lives, and yet they're not feeling oppressed or something. And he talks about this kind of feminists that presume that they know better than everyone else, because it's numerous studies that show that men and women, on average, simply do want different things. Professor Schröder also talks about the difference between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. He says that everyone should have the same opportunity and chances, but that we will probably never reach the equality of outcome, because men and women, simply do want different things. I mean, the gender equality paradox is nothing new, widely studied, and Professor Schröder talks about it in the interview as well. In those countries where equality of opportunity is most prevalent, aka rich Scandinavian countries with strong egalitarian tendencies and a strong welfare system, of course, the more women and men differ in their characteristics and in their job choices, actually, with men choosing more technical fields and women choose to work more with people. The poorer the country, on the other hand, more women will choose fields like technology, science, and engineering. This is all super interesting, and for most people it probably would make sense, because probably there are jobs out there that more men prefer doing and jobs that more women prefer doing. And it's all pretty well studied as well. And maybe, just maybe, the unbelievable could be actually the case that women are on average happier when they stay at home with the kids more instead of working at an office. Yeah, but it's 2023 and it's probably the most controversial thing to say something like that, even though in the interview it's mentioned again and again that men and women should have the exact same chances and opportunities to pursue the careers they actually like. The very prominent German newspaper, the Süddeutsche Zeitung, calls out Schröder for his brazenness. The author writes that it's ridiculous that Schröder dares to say that maybe women as a group shouldn't be regarded as victims in the Germany of 2023 anymore. Oh, and they actually call him a misogynist. The author of the newspaper article writes that the obvious disinterest of the author, Professor Schröder, regarding the complexity of the topic is concerning, which makes his book so outrageous and disappointing. Yeah, so there are a lot of pretty, let's call them unnuanced people in Germany here as well, because it's just one right side and one wrong side, according to most media outlets, and nothing in between. Sounds pretty healthy to me. I always find it funny how conceited journalists can become when they feel personally attacked somehow. I mean, calling a renowned college professor like Martin Schröder, with quite a number of pretty respected publications, a misogynist, is pretty much in the same silliness level as calling J.K. Rowling a transphobe. There's a study I first heard about when I was watching Chris Williamson's podcast, when he was interviewing the Tin Man, who has an amazing Insta profile, by the way. And the Tin Man talks about the study they did with Uber drivers, comparing male and female Uber drivers. And in this study, they were looking into the pay gap between male and female Uber drivers. Because yes, there actually is a pay gap, but how is that possible when all the Uber drivers get the exact same rate when they are driving, and there's no system of seniority or something, and no potential cognitive bias from the employer? But still, the pay gap was around 7%, I think. And the big question is, how is it possible that such a pay gap exists when a systemic discrimination can be ruled out pretty much? Well, it turned out it was 3 factors. The first one was that men are working on average longer hours and for a longer period of time, which means they could gather more experiences and get better faster. The second one was that male Uber drivers tend to go to locations with higher crime rates and are generally looking more proactively for locations where they can earn more per hour. And the third reason was that men on average simply drive faster. This study shows pretty well that there are fundamental differences between men and women, because men and women are not the same, despite what radical-minded people / feminists would like to make us all believe. The World Economic Forum in 2020 wrote that it will take more than 130 years to close the gender pay gap. But the question we should probably ask ourselves is this: should we as a society really strive to close this gap, or would that mean that women couldn't do any longer what a majority of them actually really want to do, according to Professor Schröder's studies, which at least for some time is working part-time and staying at home with the kids? But probably just forgot that the nuclear family is the Western world's problem number 1, and Professor Schröder is wrong, and every meta-analysis is wrong, and we should just be as enlightened as the radical fourth-wave feminists, and we should just override every evolutionary instinct we got left in our bodies, and then we all would be happy. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.